It's the day after Yom Kippur. Tough Shin Pei baked. The September 17th, 2021. Yom Kippur is the Day of Atonement. Jewish people pray together for atonement for their sins. Jewish people are part of the world, so if the Jewish people will be forgiven, so the whole world will be forgiven also with them. But the Jewish people are a unity of the children of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They're a separate people. And they were given by Moses a separate covenant, a way to serve God and to build a dwelling place for God in this world. The biblical nation of Israel. It still exists today, but it exists in the home of the Jewish people. The theocracy which existed in the times of King David and Solomon, the kings of Israel, 400 years. They had a temple in Jerusalem till it was destroyed by the Babylonians. And then it was rebuilt 70 years later by Ezra in an attempt to return to the way it was during the time of the first temple, in the times of Solomon. 400 years later, the Romans conquered Israel, destroyed the temple, and the Jewish people were dispersed. No longer was there a theocracy. There was a religion that was left over, which is Judaism. Jewish people pray every day, 3 times a day, to return to the days of old. It's not very practical to return to the days of old when the world has changed. It's been revealed in the world, Christianity, another form of monotheism, and Islam, another form of monotheism. To return to the theocracy of the biblical nation of Israel, and to go according to Jewish law, exactly as it was in the times of the temple, where at this time there was only one faith, one monotheistic faith in the world. And now there are three monotheistic faiths in the world. Each one has its own plan, its own law. Even though we say we should turn to God return us to the days of old, it's a custom. The Zohar, which was revealed 800 years ago, authentic Jewish work, does not really teach to return to the days of old, and it teaches more to go to a higher level than the Jewish people were living by in the times of the Holy Temple. A level which would include in it 70 lights of God, including Judaism. All the religions that came after Judaism, Christianity, Islam, today there is yoga, which is teaching one God. All of them have the same desire, that is, spiritual unity and peace. Jewish people say 2 times a day, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord is your God, the Lord is one." This is called the supernal unity. It includes in it also religion, Judaism, and universal faith. Christians cross themselves 2 sides, up, down. It actually represents the same thing as is represented by the statement, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord is your God, the Lord is one." It's a unity of right, left. All sides are joined together with God, who is one. There is Orthodox religion, which is necessary for education of the children and for survival of the family structure. And then there is universal faith, which is spirituality above nature. This was the desire of Moses, the prophet, when the Torah was given to Israel. And he recited these words at the end of his life to represent the eternal goal of man on earth, that is, to build the kingship of God, based on this passage, "Shema Yisrael, the Lord is your God, the Lord is one. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is your God, the Lord is one." Israel being the nation which unites all the faiths of the world together, 70 lights, 70 colors of faith, and each of these peoples, that is Jacob, Esau, and Ishmael, they were later on given a way to serve God. They're not friends in this world, but there's a teaching, love your enemy. As long as we all believe in one God, we have one common bond, and we approach the goal of the unity of God on earth in different ways. On Yom Kippur, the late afternoon, is recited a portion of the prophets, the story of Jonah and the whale. Jonah was a prophet, a very holy man, inspired in the divine unity of God, which I just spoke about. Prophets connect to the divine unity of God. Those simple people are connected to religion, but prophets are connected to the unity of God, which unites God with what we spoke about, the universal faith and religion, Shema Yisrael. Shema being to hear, which is blind faith, and the connection to of the two sides of God, of spirituality, uniting them together, which is connected to knowledge of God. There's simple faith, and then there's knowledge of God. Simple faith is for every man. Knowledge of God belongs to the prophets. Jonah was given by God a mission. Now, Jonah lived in the nation of Israel that became separated from the nation of Judah. After King Solomon had passed away, there was a civil war, and the nation of Israel was separated into two parts. They were Judah, where was the Holy Temple, and Israel of Samaria. Judah, where the temple was the priest place where the priests served in the temple, the Levites served in the temple, and the king, who was from the tribe of Judah, was in Jerusalem. Judah was run according to the strict interpretation of the law of Moses, called the oral law, which is the strict interpretation derived from the written law. The written law of the 5 books of Moses, which does not really specify all the ways to fulfill the commandments of God that are in the written law. There are 613 commandments in the written law, and they're explained in the oral law how to fulfill these commandments. Later on, it became written, the oral law, until the sage Rambam, called Maimonides, compiled all the laws of the oral law, which is discussed in the Talmud in one book, which discusses, called Mishnah Torah, which has in it all the laws of the 613 laws that were given by Moses to Israel. It's also a Sefer Mitzvah, which specifically tells what were these laws, and the Mishnah Torah explains more clearly how to fulfill it. The nation of Judah followed strictly the law of Moses. The nation of Israel broke off from the nation of Judah and added to the law of Moses freedom. The nation of Israel was founded by Yerobeam ben Nevat, and the Zohar said that Yerobeam ben Nevat was connected to the spirituality of the Messiah of Joseph. The Messiah of Joseph is the spirituality that combines freedom with religion. So the nation of Israel was, we could call, progressive Jewish spirituality, while the nation of Judah was strict Orthodox. Judaism has survived until today through the strict Orthodox way. But in every generation, people fall out. There is assimilation because there's no longer a theocracy. In the times of the temple, if you made a desecration, you could be punished terribly. Today, people are able to even desecrate the Sabbath without being punished. In the nation of Israel, we're not clear exactly what were the laws of the nation of Israel that was made by Yerim ben Nevat. But there was in the nation of Israel, which was founded by Yerim ben Nevat, prophets. More prophecy than was in the nation of Judah. Prophets connect to God directly. They converse with God. They receive messages directly from God, not only through the Torah of Moses, but they get these messages to come in to them. And in prophecy can be called a new light. The prophecy of Moses, we are told, was higher than any of the prophecies. And the nation of Judah is devoted only to follow the prophecy of Moses. That is the oral law that Moses gave to the Jewish people, to make the Jewish people a holy nation. Jonah was a prophet in Israel. And in Israel, there was freedom that there was not in Judah. And Jonah, his life, he always wanted, desired that the two nations of Israel, Israel of Samaria and Judah should be united together again. And he used to try to bring people from Samaria into Jerusalem for the holidays. And there were roadblocks. He was devoted to unity of the Jewish people. It was a great sadness that the nation was split into two parts. Jonah was able to receive prophecy, though, living in Israel of Samaria. And he received a prophecy, a message from God, which was completely against the law of Moses as is taught in Judah. That message was to go out of the land of Israel to the city of Nineveh to convert them to the universe and bring them to the universal faith. You could not make them Jews. They could only become Jews through Jewish law, and which was through the Sanhedrin. God told Jonah that the nation of Nineveh was in danger of being destroyed. The city of Nineveh, many non-Jews lived there. Why was Jonah so interested in saving this city There amongst them were many wicked people, because God told him. He heard from God to do this. A prophet in Judah is warned about these messages, that what God teaches or tells you to do, sometimes it's forbidden to do it, because it goes against the law of Moses in the theocracy of Jacob. But Jonah was living in Israel. He was not going to get punished for going to save the people of Nineveh. However, he still did not want to break his connection with the nation of Judah completely. By doing this, he was going to be called a traitor in the nation of Judah. And he was respected, and he was trying to work to bring the two nations together. So even though God told him to do this, he went against God's will, went on a ship, and he was thrown off the ship because the people saw that Jonah was the cause of the storm that was threatening the ship, and he was swallowed up in the belly of a whale. He lived in the belly of the whale for 3 days. We are told that he prayed while he was in the belly of the whale, and God opened the mouth of the fish, and the fish spit him out onto dry land. He had another chance to do the mission of God. God was actually telling him, you have no other choice. I want the universal faith. That's what God wanted. And the universal faith means that the whole world has to be united with the kingship of God and the name of God. Jonah again was a little hesitant, and he decided he had to do it, and he traveled to Nineveh. He told them what they had to do to save themselves. They had to fast, they had to pray. The king of the city, he decreed that what they had to do, what Jonah told them to do. And the city of Nineveh was saved. Jonah had completed the mission that God had gave him. And he should have been very, very happy about it. But at the end of this reading, biblical reading, which is the story of Jonah, he was very, very unhappy. He had done the work of the Messiah, the work of salvation for non-Jews. And now he was no longer part of the theocracy of Judah. He became an enemy of the theocracy of Judah. The theocracy of Judah is not interested in the universal faith. The universal faith is connected to many prophets, but these prophets are not accepted in the theocracy of Judah. The story is explained in the Zohar in its simple meaning, because the story of Jonah was added to the Jewish Bible, even though in it there was a very, very difficult issue, how a prophet went out of Israel to save a non-Jewish nation from destruction. But it was accepted to become part of the Jewish Bible. And this particular story is read on the Day of Atonement by all Jews in the afternoon. In the Jewish Bible, it is connected to repentance and atonement. The day of Yom Kippur is the Day of Atonement. Jonah had sinned because he didn't want to do what God told him to do. And he was buried in the stomach of the whale, and he prayed there for help. So the sages of Israel, of Judah, saw this as a symbol for any Jew who has sinned, that he can pray to God for forgiveness from his sin. And God can forgive. And God does forgive. The way to forgiveness is through prayer. And Yom Kippur, the holy day of Yom Kippur, is a day where Jews get together and they pray for forgiveness. They recite prayers and they specify the many sins that a man can create in this world. And they pray for forgiveness for each one of these sins. All of this is written in the Makser, the prayer book for Yom Kippur. And it's said over and over again. In the evening, all these sins are recited. Al Chet, how we have sinned. We admit that we have sinned. We have sinned against our parents. We have sinned against our fellow man. We have sinned against God. We have sinned against our own selves. It's said at night, every prayer, it's repeated. It's the Day of Atonement. And Jonah prayed from the belly of God. And he prayed, and the whale, and he was miraculously saved. So every person, no matter how bad your situation is has the way to reach God from the deepest part of your heart and pray to God from the deepest part of your heart. The prayer of Jonah, each one has their own prayer. The Jews prayed together on the Day of Atonement. So this is the message. This is the basic reason why this story of Jonah is read in the Bible from the Bible on Yom Kippur, and it's part of the Jewish Bible. The Zohar explains what the significance of the story of Jonah in another way. Jonah in the belly of the whale is compared to a man that's in his grave. When a person is buried, he goes before the holy court, and the court decides on his future. Will he merit to a share in the afterlife and in the resurrection of the dead, or will he be damned forever? The good people merit to a share in the afterlife and a share in the world to come. Those people that have been evil their whole lives, their future is they came from dust and they return to dust. This is the message of the Zohar for everyone. I want to tell you a little about my story. When I was 21 years old, I had been doing some substitute teaching in public school. The summer vacation came. My friends and I, we had been exposed to yoga through a guru that was traveling the world. And my friend and I, we decided that we wanted to go to India to see what it was like to be on an ashram in India. I was a little hesitant to go because I was traditional Jewish. There was never a Yom Kippur that I didn't fast, and there was never a Passover where I ate bread. And my mother lit candles, Shabbos candles, before the Sabbath. Nevertheless, I was an assimilated Jew, and I didn't follow. When I became 13, I didn't continue Judaism. So it was a little against my conscience to go to India and to study there. I wanted a connection to Judaism, but I saw that the Guru had revealed to me the universal faith, right, left, and center, and that our obligation, main obligation in life, is to reveal the universal faith, the unity of God on earth. Yoga literally means union. Now, Judaism, in our city, New York, in Brooklyn, there was a sect of Hasidism, which invited Jews who had been living assimilated lives to study. This place was on Eastern Parkway, 770 Eastern Parkway. I had an experience to have been in 770 Eastern Parkway, and I saw the Rebbe there in the evening of the Sabbath. And I saw he was a great man, a good man, and they had a good desire to bring Jews back to Judaism. At the same time, it was within me a conflict between Judaism and the universal faith. Judaism is Orthodox Jewish. It does not include in it other faiths. It's really closed off to the world. But nevertheless, I felt Judaism was my religion. My religion was not Hinduism. Even though the Guru was teaching the universal faith, nevertheless, it was in India. And the religion in India is Hinduism. Namaskar. They have very strange customs. Cows, they are sacred to them. The river is sacred to them. It's a strange land and interesting to visit. So I visited India with my friend. I didn't really feel comfortable there, but I spent some time there, a week, 2 weeks there. It was hard for me. I had diarrhea. I got medicine for it. It was very hot. And I decided to leave the ashram and to go touring. I went touring. I went to Kashmir. It was a very unhealthy place, and I caught typhoid fever there. And I suffered a terrible, terrible trauma during typhoid fever. I was out in the street. I was hallucinating from fever. I thought, like Jonah in the belly of the whale, I had been damned. I had been punished. I made it to the hospital, to the airport, and they took me to the hospital, and I was wrecked. And my brother came and he brought me back to America. And I was in the hospital in America for 1 month. I thought I was finished. But then one day, a beautiful girl came to visit me. I didn't know her so well. And at that very moment when she came to visit me, all of a sudden, the trauma disappeared. And she hugged me and I hugged her. And I left the hospital. I was on, of course, medication. They said that I was schizophrenic, but there was a connection with typhoid fever and trauma. I got home, continuing to get better every day. The girl came to visit me one day when I was in my home. She lived across the street. She said, come with me to the mountains. She was a hippie still, and I was once a hippie. I told her not now. She went to the mountains, and then I heard the next day she died in an auto crash. It was a big tragedy. If she had come back a second time, third time, I might have ended up marrying her. But God took her life. It wasn't my destiny. My destiny was to go back to Crown Heights and the Rebbe, to begin to see what was involved with my Jewish heritage, to study in the Lubavitch by the Rebbe of the Lubavitch. It wasn't easy connecting there because the Lubavitch is very strictly Orthodox and very closed off to the universal faith. They preach in the Lubavitch that Christianity is idolatry and yoga is idolatry. They do have idols. But I ignored these words, and I stayed with the Lubavitch movement, and I met an old girlfriend of my friend, and she also came to Lubavitch, and we got married. We stayed married 25 years, and she took me to Israel. We're still in touch now, and we had 7 children. She was born on Christmas Eve. When I divorced her, we divorced the second time, and I had really gone through a very, very hard time with her. I saw that in my previous reincarnation, I was connected to the universal faith and Christianity. So it was, for that reason, it was very hard for me to return to strictly Orthodox religion. And today, I am connected or spoken for the universal faith, which is Shema Yisrael. It's part of Judaism, but it's suppressed in Judaism. Just like the Kabbalah is suppressed in Judaism. The Kabbalah was unknown for over 1,000 years in Judaism until the Zohar was discovered. And in the Zohar, I saw a statement saying there, why does one person connect with the universal faith, which is really an enemy to Judaism? It's because of a reincarnation. How the Zohar could be able to tell so clearly what are the two sides of spirituality, and explaining how they become united in the universal faith and the meaning of Shema Yisrael. The Zohar became, for me, the vehicle to describe to Jews and to non-Jews the connection of the universal faith to the Torah. Jonah was a messenger of God and the universal faith. And he went to Nineveh. By doing this, he became an enemy in his homeland, in the city of Jerusalem. And he was very, very sad about it at the end of the story. But he did bring salvation to many people. The Zohar says that any people who are representatives of the universal faith will suffer. They suffer because they are rebelling against the establishment. The establishment of God on earth is religion. And there are three establishments of God on earth, which is Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. In the Ottoman Empire, Accra, there was a prophet who preached the universal faith, and he was put in prison. And his teachings were later received, and it became called Baha'i. And in Haifa, there is a center of Baha'i, and beautiful gardens. Many people go there. It's a very, very popular tourist spot in Israel. The Baal Shem Tov, the founder of Hasidism, was preaching the universal faith, teachings of the Zohar. He had been told by the Messiah that in a dream when he went up in heaven, that to teach the universal faith. This is similar to Jonah. God told Jonah to go to Nineveh. The Baal Shem Tov was told, teach the universal faith to the simple man and bring the simple Jews to the universal faith of God and to Judaism. And he had many opponents. He suffered opposition. His student, Rabbi Shneir Zalman of Liadi, the founder of the Chabad Hasidic movement, he was imprisoned by opponents to Chabad Hasidism. And the present Lubavitcher rabbi today, he had many, many opponents. They came to ask him questions why his Chabad Hasidim, they don't sleep in the sukkah, on sukkahs. They don't sleep in these booths on sukkahs. Why they don't eat third meal. Other questions. And of course, the Messianic Chabad movement is very, very controversial today. That the Chabad Hasidim declare the Rebbe as the Messiah. On the other side of Judaism, Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, 30,000 Jews went to the city of Uman in Russia. Interesting, they left Israel to go there, just like Jonah left Israel to go to Nineveh, to pray at the grave of Rabbi Nachman. A letter just came out from Torah scholars, rabbis, that Hasidut, the Breslov, what is being taught is idolatry. These rabbis call Breslov idolatry because they call him the man of truth. And when they go to his grave, they prostrate themselves at his grave. Jonah, when he finished his mission, he was sad because he saw his mission had not yet been completed. It needed to be completed. That he's going to die someday. The people of Nineveh might make statues in Nineveh, statues of Jonah, and worship them, just like there are statues that are made that are worshipped in the ashram in India of their saints of truth, and the Christians have the statue of the Messiah of freedom in their chapels and outside their chapels. Jonah was not able to control what will be after him. But he was not made into a Messiah by the whole world. The Messiah, the one who was made a Messiah by the whole world, was buried in the grave 3 days, similar to Jonah, who was buried in the belly of the whale for 3 days, and his students said that he had resurrected. And resurrection became part of Christianity. The Messiah of freedom and resurrection. It's very well, the Christians connect the life of their master with Jonah and the story of Jonah as a continuation of the mission of Jonah to bring the whole world to God. In the prophecies of Bilam, he says there, though he beat oven, it says there that will sprout forth a star in Jacob. That is the Messiah of Jacob, was the Messiah, the son of David, and will come a rod which will be the strength of Israel. And Isaiah, in one of his prophecies, talks about choter, which means a rod. Choter being a man from Israel who will bring to the world the universal faith. Jacob is Orthodox Judaism. The universal faith is connected to the Messiah, the son of Joseph. It was an attempt to bring the universal faith when the nation of Judah, that the Zohar said that Yerebiam was connected to the Messiah, the son of Joseph, and Jonah was connected to the Messiah, the son of Joseph. And the Messiah of freedom is the revelation of the Messiah, the son of Joseph. But we know the story of the Bible how Joseph was hated by his brothers and thrown into a pit. Jonah knew that he had sinned against the law of Moses by doing what he did. But God asked him to do it. But in the law of Moses, it says that a prophet can be punished for doing what God wants him to do if it's not according to the law of Moses. This is the conflict that exists today in the world, which there are people who are trying to resolve this conflict, and there is a way of resolving this conflict through understanding the Torah, the 5 books of Moses, because Moses was also in this conflict when he had to break the first tablets of God, which were connected to the universal faith. And he also was sad about it. God should help to give Israel an atonement on Yom Kippur, and the world should reach the level of spiritual revelation, the revelation of the universal faith. There should be peace on earth, inner peace, peace in the heavens, peace on earth, peace, the unity of heaven and earth. The temple should come down from heaven, as it prophesied in the Zohar and other places. The 2 temples were destroyed, were built by man. The 3rd temple will be eternal. It will come down to heaven. And Mashiach, the Messiah, will be riding on his chariot with the temple, and the whole world will know that Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.